You're doing it wrong. Greetings, people of the internet. I'm Scott with Serkworks Art Labs. Welcome to the underground laboratory where typically we create robots, aliens, zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity. But sometimes we just have a little talk. We chat a little bit. This may turn into a rant. I'm not sure. We'll see where it goes. But I got a comment on one of my marker review videos, and it sort of stuck in my craw a little bit. It got the wheels in my head turning because, and it goes back to some, I don't know if you would call it advice or criticisms that I've had throughout, my career with, either like mentors or people who were in some area of authority, or just random critics putting out advice that I really don't agree with. So I just thought it was something that I wanted to talk about. So now I get criticisms all the time on my videos, in the comments section. A lot of them are in the marker rendering or the marker demo videos that I do, because I have a habit of pronouncing Copic markers as Copic markers. That's the way I used to say it, and I've been corrected a number of times, and I'm trying to change the way I say it, but old habits die hard, and I tend to keep reverting back to that. So I slip up every now and again, but I get comments all the time, oh, you're saying it wrong, it's pronounced this and that, and that's fine. I'm totally okay with that. And obviously constructive criticism is great, but then sometimes you get these critics or people, and this, I don't really think I was being trolled or anything like that, but I just think this was a person who was really passionate about Copic markers, to the extent that they were really infuriated by the fact that they thought that I was using them in a way that was not how they were intended to be used, not maybe what the manufacturer envisioned or something like that. And I guess if you're a Copic marker evangelist, I guess maybe that's okay, but throughout my experience in my career and my life as being an artist, I really have a problem with people telling you that there's a correct way to use art supplies or a correct way to do art, or that really bothers me, whether it's coming from a teacher or just some schmo off the street or whatever. Well, especially a schmo off the street is okay, because they probably don't really know art, but people that should know better, or people that should be artists, I just don't see people telling you, oh, there's use this in this specific way. So this comment was like, this isn't a true comparison. I guess I should go back to what the video is really about. So basically what I was doing a comparison between the chameleon markers, which are color changing markers. It's kind of a unique design. There's a little colorless blender that's included in it, and then you take the tip and you go like that, and it infuses the color, and then you go like that, and it kind of gives you a little graduated tone, which is interesting. Now, these are the only markers that I know like this on the market, so in order to compare them, I was comparing them to Copic markers. And I compare everything to Copic markers because Copics are sort of the gold standard, they're the industry standard, they're sort of the Cadillac of markers, and I love Copics. Everyone seems to love Copics, but they're a little pricey, so I always try to give people other alternatives. And I'm not a fanboy of any particular marker brand. I don't really have brand loyalty to Copics or any other ones, although they are my favorite marker. But like I said, I'll mix and match all kinds of different alcohol-based markers and experiment with them, and I think that's kind of what I'm getting at with this, because art is about experimentation. It's about self-expression. That's why I've dubbed this the art lab, because art and experimentation, I think, go hand in hand. But anyway, so they said, I'm not using these how they were intended, this person, and they said this kind of cracked me up in a way, but they said, by all means you can play around. This is the rule. This is like straight out the commenter's mouth. But by all means you can use the colors blender, but but not like that. Not like I was using, because what I was doing was I was trying to see if you can get the same effect with the Copic markers as you can with the chameleons. So I just took, you know, a Copic marker and the blender, and I touched them together and see if you can do that infusing, and to my surprise it actually kind of worked. Which that's really cool, because that's one of the things, that's why I'm talking, that's why I really like the idea of experimenting with different art supplies and things like that, because I'd be willing to bet that the person that came up with this design was probably playing around with Copics or some other marker and just like touching them together. Let me see if this works, and oh, that's kind of cool, but it's kind of hard to hold them like that and to get all wobbly and everything. So what if there was like a little, what if they click together and you can do that and you can hold it? And so somebody probably was playing around with markers, experimenting, and then they came up with an idea to create something like this, and they probably made a lot of money out of it. But if there wasn't any, you know, if there wasn't any experimentation, if there wasn't this idea of trying to figure out other ways to use things, we could have missed out on a really cool product. So, you know, but I have issues with people telling you there's a right way to use art supplies. It's like, you know, don't color outside the lines, you know. And from my earliest memory as an artist, the first time I can ever remember doing art and being creative was, you know, back with coloring books. You know, everyone colors and things, but I had this Batman coloring book. This is way back in the days where, now not so far, I mean there was a 60s Batman, I don't go that far back, but it was in reruns, but I would watch the old you know, Adam West, Burt Ward Batman, you know, the campy one and everything, and Super Friends and all that stuff. So I had a Batman coloring book, and I colored in Batman and everything and tried to get the colors right and everything like that with my little box of Crayola crayons and everything. So I filled up this whole coloring book and everything, and you know, then it's done, my Batman coloring book is finished, so I'm like, well, what do I do now? And then, you know, I've got some other coloring books. They're not Batman, but I'm like, I like Batman. So I started taking other people, you know, it could have been just like, here's a mom and a dad playing, you know, a picture of a, you know, in a coloring book or something like that, or, you know, playing with their kids or something. And I would go in and I draw Cal on the guy, or I draw, you know, Domino mask and capes and all that kind of cool stuff. And then after that, I started just getting loose sheets of paper and drawing my own Batman. And that's kind of how I my earliest memory of being creative drawing. But it was, the reason that came about, because I didn't color inside the lines, you know? It's kind of cliche, but I went outside of the box. And I think that's really what you need to do with artwork, because I just don't like the idea of people telling you that there's one way to do it, you know? And it's fun to mess around with art supplies and things and tools, art tools and things like that, because this isn't woodworking. It's not like, I mean, if you're you know, a woodworker or something and you're not using tools the right way, you could lose a finger or put out an eye or something like that. But that's not art, you know. I don't even think I've got art supplies where there's like instructions. I mean, you just gotta figure them out. I mean, there might be some, I don't know, but it's all in the spirit of experimentation. And you know, some of the most viral, the artists that go super viral are doing it because they're using these sort of unorthodox, you know, ways of like mediums or whatever. I mean, there's artists that take, you know, Crayola crayons and they'll like whittle them away and create little sculptures on Crayola crayons. Now, you know, you may say, well, you're supposed to color with crayons, you're not supposed to sculpt them, you know? Or, you know, I've seen artists that they go to thrift stores and they pick out old thrift store paintings and they'll paint little monsters in there, or giant kaiju or robots or something like that. And that's super cool. But, you know, what if somebody says, oh, you're defacing the artwork, the original artwork? You know, I mean, these are things that wound up in a thrift store. I mean, I just think that's super cool. I've seen people take, you know, make paintings, if you call them paintings or whatever you want to call them, out of like thumbtacks, different color thumbtacks, and creating portraits out of them just by pushing them in and using the different colors, sort of like that photo mosaics. Or like same thing with jelly beans. I've seen, you know, get all those jelly bellies that come in all kinds of different colors and creating these just amazing paintings with jelly beans, or Post-it notes, you know, the colored Post-it notes, you put them all up like that, you get this really cool things. Or I've seen an artist that takes Rubik's cubes, and you know, you've got the 6 different sides of the Rubik's cubes in the different color, and they change, and that's more than just art. That's like, not only you're having to figure out the Rubik's cube, and you're trying to figure out how that colors work together to make a portrait. I mean, that's crazy. There's artists that go out and find cars that are sitting in a parking lot that are just filled with dust, and paint with and create these awesome images with just the dust on a car. There's an artist that took and created this amazing portrait of Jimi Hendrix out of guitar picks. And I mean, speaking of Hendrix, I mean, think about it. Think about, what if somebody told Jimi Hendrix, oh, you're playing the guitar the wrong way. You're left-handed. You can't play a right-handed guitar. That's ridiculous. I mean, can you imagine somebody telling Hendrix that? Or don't play guitar with your teeth. You're supposed to play with your fingers. I mean, that kind of experimentation and creativity is what made Hendrix, not only that, but the fact that he was an awesome, like one of the best guitar players ever. But I mean, can you imagine somebody telling somebody that? I mean, this isn't color by art isn't color by numbers. It can be, you know, but you've got to stretch your limitations. You've got to try different things out. And you know, going to, I mean, if you guys and gals that are in school, you know, you probably get the same advice, like, oh, don't draw anime. That's not art, you know. Now, I'm a believer in, you know, learn things the right way. What's the quote by Picasso? It's like, what is it? Learn the rules like a pro so that you can break them like an artist. So I believe in that. I believe, you know, you should kind of get the human form the way it is before you start exaggerating and extrapolating and things like that. But once you kind of know that, I mean, that's some of the coolest artwork, is when you know, whether you take it to anime or more comic booky style or more cartoony style. I mean, that's what creates all these different forms of artwork. And if you have a teacher telling you that that's wrong, don't do that. Other than the fact that, you know, if they're trying to get you to do it right before you kind of transition that, I can see that. But if they're telling you flat out that it's not art, I mean, that's not cool, man. I mean, it was the same thing when I was, I mean, anime hadn't quite exploded in the US when I was in school, but it was still, you know, Western comic art. You know, a lot of teachers would tell people, don't draw comics, don't draw, you know, cartoons, or, you know, that's, you know, whatever. You know, I was lucky enough to be in a cool program where they encouraged comic book artwork and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, people in especially in a position of authority, I just think that's really bad advice, and I would take anything like that with a grain of salt and be a little leery about that. So, you know, and when it comes to comics, I mean, there's so many different styles. I mean, you know, when you say, if you use a brush, you can use a brush. There's not one way to use a brush. You can press down on it hard to get thicker lines. You can go real thin with it. Or if your brush gets messed up, I mean, sure, you could toss it, but, you know, who knows, that split brush can give you some really cool effects. I get some, you know, whether it's a dry brush effect or whatever, there's so many different ways. There's not one way to use an art tool. You know, obviously, I think you can see, you know, where I'm going with this, but, you know, I would just encourage everyone just to experiment with your tools. That's what creates so many different styles of artwork, because we don't want everyone's art to look the same, you know? We want variety. That's when we gravitate to an artist, it's usually because we find something different about it. And, you know, so, you know, and I don't want to put this, I probably already have, but I want to totally put this person on blast, but it's not so much about that particular person, but just reminding me of things that people told me throughout my life. And you know, I always tell people, you know, if I'm showing somebody how to do something, I'll say, you know, this is how, and I always try to make the caveat that this is how I do something, you know, but you feel free to do whatever you want. This is work for me or whatever. And I think that's the best advice, because otherwise, you know, everyone's stuff is going to look the same. So experiment with your stuff, you know, experiment with your supplies, use different mediums that may be unorthodox or that, you know, people haven't used before. But, you know, don't let anyone tell you that there is a right or a wrong way to do art. I mean, unless you're Stan Lee, because we do comics the Marvel way, and the Marvel way is the best way, and the only way. I'm just kidding. But no, there are so many different ways to do artwork, so keep on experimenting, keep on, think of art like you would a scientist approach something, and just play around with things and have fun with it, and don't listen to that kind of advice. And anyway, I will see you guys later. That is all. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me here in the Art Lab. There's a lot of other great content on the channel, so click that subscribe button and you won't miss a thing. If you're an aspiring evil genius, visit Serkworks.com for all your mad science supply needs. And if you want to contact me, hit me up in the comments section or follow me on social media. I'm looking forward to it. I'll see you then.